Welcome to Basta Stories, where real-life horror and true ghost stories come to life, from haunted forests to chilling encounters with the darkest parts of human nature. Each episode dives into the terrifying and unexplained. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and ask yourself, are you really alone?
In the dead of night, when the world should be still, a sound, faint, deliberate, and chilling, pierced the silence of my home. It wasn't the wind or the creak of old wood settling. It was something alive, something intentional, clawing at the edges of my sanity. My name is David, and this is the story of how my family's peace was shattered by the one person we never thought to fear. Our 8-year-old daughter, Christy. The first time it happened, I jolted awake, my heart hammering against my ribcage. The bedroom was cloaked in darkness, the kind that presses against your eyes, making every shadow seem alive. I lay still, straining to hear it again. That faint, rhythmic sound from the hallway. Something was tampering with the door. My wife, Carmen, stirred beside me, her breath uneven as she mumbled, half asleep. David, what's wrong? I shushed her gently, my ears locked on the sound. It was gone. Silence swallowed the room again, but it left a residue of unease, like a cold hand brushing the back of my neck. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a loose hinge or the house settling. We'd just moved to this quiet suburban home, far from the city's chaos. I'd always locked our bedroom door, a habit from my days in rougher neighborhoods. Surely, it was just my mind playing tricks. The next night, it returned, a deliberate, testing twist of the doorknob, slow and calculated, as if someone or something wanted to slip inside unnoticed. My pulse quickened, a primal instinct screaming that this wasn't right. I shook Carmen awake, her groggy eyes narrowing as she listened. "It's the door," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. We crept toward it, our bare feet cold against the hardwood floor, the air thick with the scent of lavender from Carmen's bedside candle. The sound stopped just as we reached the door, leaving us staring at the brass knob, glinting faintly in the moonlight. I turned it, expecting nothing but the empty hallway. And there it was, empty, save for the faint outline of our daughter's toys scattered at the far end. Carmen squeezed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Maybe it's Christy," she said, her voice hopeful but trembling. I nodded, but a knot tightened in my gut. Why would an 8-year-old be up at this hour, fumbling with our door? The third night was quiet, too quiet, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I barely slept, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for that sound to return. Carmen tossed beside me, her dreams restless, her soft murmurs filling the void. What if it wasn't Christy? What if someone else was in our home? Watching. Waiting. I pushed the thought away, clinging to the comfort of routine. Christy was our light. Her giggles filled the house. Her crayons littered the kitchen table. She was just a child, curious and innocent. But the next night, the sound came back, sharper this time, more insistent. The knob turned, hesitated, then turned again, as if testing the lock's resolve. Carmen's eyes met mine, wide with terror. "That's not normal. David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I slid out of bed, my heart pounding so loudly I feared it would betray me. I pressed my ear to the door, the wood cold against my skin. The sound stopped, but I felt it. A presence, just beyond the threshold, waiting. I flung the door open, my breath catching as I saw her. Christy, my little girl, stood there in her pale blue pajamas, her eyes wide and unblinking. "Christy," I said, my voice cracking. "What are you doing?" She tilted her head, her voice soft but strangely hollow. "I missed you and Mommy." Her words should have warmed me, but they didn't. They felt rehearsed, like lines from a play I didn't understand. She turned and walked back to her room, her small figure vanishing into the dark. I closed the door, my hands trembling as I locked it again. Carmen pulled the blankets tight around her. "She's just lonely," she said, but her voice wavered. I nodded, but the image of Christy's blank stare burned into my mind. Days passed, and I couldn't shake the unease. Why did she walk away so calmly after trying to get in? Why did her words feel so wrong? I watched Christy during the day, her laughter bright as she played with her dolls. But there was something off, a flicker in her eyes, a moment when her smile didn't reach them. I started to count the nights, the times I'd heard that sound, the way it seemed to grow bolder. The next night, I didn't open the door. I pressed my ear to it instead, my breath shallow, my body tense. The knob turned, slow and deliberate, as if whoever was on the other side knew I was listening. My blood ran cold. It was Christy again. I could sense her, her small hands twisting the handle, trying to breach the barrier between us. But why? What did she want? The question gnawed at me, keeping me awake until dawn. my mind spiraling with possibilities. What if she wasn't just lonely? What if something darker was driving her? I couldn't voice it to Carmen. She'd think I was losing my mind. But I had to know. I had to protect us. The following night, I made a choice that still haunts me. I left the door unlocked. I lay in bed, my phone's dim light casting shadows across the room, pretending to sleep, but watching the door through half-closed eyes. Carmen's breathing was steady beside me, unaware of the plan I'd hatched. Hours crawled by, the house silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Then, it happened. The door handle turned, slow and deliberate, followed by the soft groan of hinges. My heart stopped. I turned off my phone, plunging the room into darkness, and squinted through the slits of my eyelids. A small figure slipped inside, closing the door behind her with a care that sent chills down my spine. It was Christy, her silhouette barely visible in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. She moved silently, her steps deliberate, crossing the room toward Carmen's side of the bed. My breath caught in my throat. She's just a child, I told myself, willing my heart to slow. But then, in one fluid motion, she reached behind her back, and the glint of metal caught the moonlight. A kitchen knife, its blade sharp and cold, gleamed in her small hand. Time slowed, the air thick with dread, as she raised the knife above her head, poised to strike Carmen. I lunged, my arm shooting out, grabbing the blade with my bare hand. Pain seared through me, blood dripping onto the sheets as I screamed. "Christy, what are you doing?" Her face twisted, not with fear or regret, but with something feral, something not my daughter. She let out a low, guttural sound, like an animal cornered, and tore herself from my grip, fleeing through the door and down the hall. I heard her bedroom door slam shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent house. Carmen woke, her screams mixing with mine as she saw the blood pooling on the sheets. We stumbled to the hospital, my hand throbbing, the wound a brutal reminder of what had just happened. I told her everything, the knife, Christy's expression, the way she ran. Her face crumpled, disbelief warring with horror. We left Christy in her room that night, too shaken to confront her, too afraid of what we'd find. When we returned at dawn, her room was empty. The window was open, curtains fluttering in the cold morning air. She was gone. Our daughter, our little girl, had vanished into the night. leaving nothing but questions and fear. We searched for days, weeks, but Christy was a ghost, swallowed by the world beyond our home. The police found no trace, no clue to where she'd gone or why she'd done it. Carmen and I don't speak of it now, but the weight of it lingers every night. I lock the bedroom door. The habit no longer just a precaution, but a ritual to keep the terror at bay. Somewhere out there, Christy might still be watching, waiting, her small hands clutching a knife in the dark. And I wonder, will I ever feel safe again? The air in the kitchen felt heavy that evening, as if the world held its breath, waiting for something to shatter the quiet. I stood at the counter, chopping onions, the sharp sting in my eyes mirroring the unease that had settled in my gut. My wife, Carrie, stirred a pot of simmering sauce, her movements mechanical, her mind elsewhere. It was just another Tuesday in our suburban home, the kind where routine lulls you into a false sense of safety. Then the back door swung open, and our 6-year-old son, Kyle, stepped in from the patio. His small hands clutched a folded piece of paper, his face pale, eyes wide with a strange, unreadable expression. Something was wrong. Kyle was a boy who wore his heart on his sleeve. Joy, anger, sadness, all painted vividly across his features. But this was different. A shadow clung to him, one I couldn't name. Kyle, what's that you've got? I asked, wiping my hands on a dish towel, trying to keep my voice light. He froze, his fingers tightening around the paper, his eyes darting to the floor. That look, his "I'm in trouble" face, sent a cold prickle down my spine. He didn't want to show me. I knelt beside him, my heart thudding, and held out my hand. "Come on, buddy, let me see." Reluctantly, he handed it over, his small body tense, as if bracing for a storm. I unfolded the paper, its edges worn, as if it had been handled too many times. The words scrawled across it in jagged, uneven handwriting stopped my breath. "Dear Kyle, I've been watching you. Don't be scared. This is how friendships begin." The words slithered into my mind, each one a needle piercing deeper. The letter praised Kyle's recent t-ball game, detailing how he'd hit a triple off the tee, how his team had taken a 2-run lead. Whoever wrote this was there, in the bleachers, eyes locked on my son. My hands trembled as I read on. The writer called themselves a friend, a kid just like you. inviting Kyle to meet tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. at 3 Orange Circle, under the sycamore tree, a place where kindred souls would become one. The words dripped with a sickening sweetness, but the final line was a blade. Don't tell your dad or mom. They won't understand. If they find out, things will get bad. I felt the room tilt, the air growing thick, suffocating. Someone had been close enough to slip this into my son's hands. "Carrie!" My voice cracked as I called for my wife. She dropped the wooden spoon, her face paling as she crossed the kitchen in 3 strides. I thrust the letter at her, my pulse hammering in my ears. Her eyes scanned the page, widening with each line, her breath hitching as she reached the threat. "This isn't a joke," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is real." I nodded, my mind racing. Orange Circle was 1 street over. A quiet cul-de-sac with an empty house on Lot 3. Its backyard dominated by a towering sycamore tree. Had someone been watching Kyle from there? The thought of a stranger lurking so close, studying my son, knowing his every move, made my stomach churn. Carrie's hands shook as she grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with frantic precision. We couldn't wait. We wouldn't. As we waited for the police, I paced the kitchen, my eyes darting to the windows, half expecting to see a face pressed against the glass. Kyle sat at the table, silent, his small hands folded in his lap. I wanted to ask him where he'd found the letter, who had given it to him, but his wide, frightened eyes stopped me. He was as scared as we were. Instead, I pulled him close, his small body trembling against mine. The letter lay on the counter, its words burning into my mind. I've been watching a while now. It's true. The writer knew too much. Kyle's game, his movements, our lives. And then there was the address, 3 Orange Circle. Why there? Why that house? Abandoned for years, its windows dark, its yard overgrown. What kind of monster lures a child to an empty house? The police arrived within 30 minutes, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows across our living room. 2 officers, a man and a woman, read the letter in silence, their faces grim. "This is serious," the woman said, her voice steady but heavy. "We'll need to take this for evidence." I pointed out the address, explaining its proximity. The sycamore tree, the empty house. The male officer nodded, jotting notes. "We'll check it out tonight," he said. "Stay inside, lock all doors, and don't let Kyle out of your sight." As they left, I locked the door behind them, the deadbolt sliding into place with a hollow thud. Carrie and I exchanged a glance, her eyes red, her jaw tight. We'd failed to protect him. The realization hit like a punch. Our backyard, fenced and supposedly safe, had been breached. Someone had slipped that letter to Kyle, maybe while he played, maybe while we cooked dinner. Oblivious, I cursed myself for not installing the security camera I'd gotten last Christmas, still sitting in its box in the garage. That night, we barely slept. I kept picturing the sycamore tree, its gnarled branches reaching into the dark, a figure waiting beneath it. Who was this person? The letter's tone, playful yet menacing, gnawed at me. It wasn't just a threat. It was a performance, a twisted game. I flipped the letter over in my mind, remembering the backwards text I'd noticed after the police left, holding it to a mirror. I'd deciphered the hidden message meant for me, not Kyle. If your mom flaps her hole, or your dad tells a soul, things might get rather gory. The words twisted like a knife, followed by a chilling story. On the 10th of July, 1995, a woman named Susie went missing. The writer claimed to have kept her, grown bored, and threw her away, their hunger unsatisfied until now, until Kyle. If one word is spoken, then children get broken, and Susie will have a new friend. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a threat to Kyle. It was a confession, a taunt, a promise of violence. The next morning, a detective called. His voice was calm, professional, but it carried a weight that made my heart sink. We reviewed missing persons cases from 1995, he said. Suzanne Carrington disappeared on July 10th, last seen at a 24-hour gym, planning to meet someone for a date. Her address? 3 Orange Circle. My breath caught in my throat. The same house. The same sycamore tree. The detective confirmed what I feared. Suzanne had never been found. Her case unsolved. The man she'd met never identified. The letter wasn't just a threat. It was a link to a crime that had haunted our town for decades. Was this the same person, resurfacing after 30 years? Or someone new, playing a sick homage? I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Carrie sat across from me, her face ashen. "What do we do?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. The police had promised to patrol Orange Circle, to watch the house, but it felt like too little, too late. They'd been in our backyard. The thought looped in my mind, relentless. I checked every window, every door, my eyes scanning the shadows beyond the glass. Kyle stayed close, his usual chatter replaced by a heavy silence. I wanted to shield him, to erase the fear in his eyes, but I couldn't shake my own. What if they came back? The sycamore tree loomed in my imagination, its roots deep in a past that refused to stay buried. We were trapped in a nightmare, waiting for the next move in a game we didn't understand. My phone vibrated relentlessly in the dead of night, each buzz slicing through the silence like a warning I couldn't ignore. It was Alex, my best friend since high school, flooding my inbox with frantic messages. "Jack, you have to come over, now. It's urgent." The words glowed on my screen, sharp and desperate, pulling me out of my groggy haze. I rubbed my eyes, the clock reading 3:17 a.m., and a cold knot tightened in my stomach. Alex wasn't the type to panic. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I threw on a jacket and drove through the empty streets, the hum of my car engine the only sound in the pre-dawn chill. We'd been inseparable since my family moved to this quiet town, escaping a string of murders that had haunted our old neighborhood. Alex and I bonded over our love for the internet's hidden corners. He was a coder, always tinkering, while I was hooked on gaming. But lately, he'd been obsessed with the dark web, spending hours lost in its shadows. I thought it was just a phase, a tech geek's curiosity. I was wrong. When I pulled up to Alex's house, the sight hit me like a punch. 4 police cars sat in the driveway, their red and blue lights pulsing like a heartbeat in the fog. A crowd of neighbors and news vans clogged the street, their murmurs blending into a low, anxious hum. I pushed through, my heart pounding, and found Alex's mother at the door, her face streaked with tears. "Jack," she said, her voice breaking. "Alex is gone." The words didn't make sense. Gone? He'd texted me just hours ago. I stood frozen, the weight of her words sinking into my bones like ice. Inside, the house felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Detectives moved through the living room, their radios crackling with static. I approached one, a tall man with a grim expression, and showed him my phone. "Alex sent me these this morning," I said, my voice unsteady. He was freaking out. Could this be why he's missing? The detective's eyes narrowed as he scrolled through the messages, his face darkening. "We'll need to keep this for now," he said, pocketing my phone. Something in his tone made my skin crawl, a flicker of doubt, like he knew something I didn't. I stayed for hours, trying to comfort Alex's parents while my mind raced. His mother's sobs echoed in my ears, each one a reminder of how little I understood. What had Alex seen? What had he found that made him so desperate? I wandered into his room, hoping for answers. The air was heavy, the faint glow of his computer monitor casting long shadows across the walls. The screen was off, but the power light blinked, taunting me with secrets. I hesitated, then pressed the button to wake it up. The screen flared to life, and my breath caught in my throat. Alex had been on the dark web, his browser open to dozens of tabs, each one a window into something grotesque. I clicked through them, my hands trembling. Articles about murders, gruesome, detailed accounts of bodies mutilated, dissolved in acid, left in forgotten apartments. My stomach churned as I skimmed the descriptions, the images searing into my mind, blood-streaked floors, severed limbs, faces frozen in terror. One article stopped me cold. It was about a murder 2 years ago in our old town. Our neighbor, a woman with a heart-shaped tattoo on her neck, had been found dead, her body carved up beyond recognition. That was why we'd moved. My parents had called it paranoia, but now I wasn't so sure. Why was Alex digging into this? I never told him about the murder. It hadn't seemed important. But here it was, staring back at me from his screen. My pulse quickened as I noticed his last search. My last name. My name. The room seemed to close in, the walls pressing against me as I tried to make sense of it. Was Alex accusing me of something? Or was he trying to warn me? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, torn between fear and the need to know. I opened his Tor browser, activated my VPN, and typed my last name into the search bar, each keystroke feeling like a step into an abyss. The screen froze, the loading bar crawling agonizingly slow. My heart pounded in my ears, the silence of the house amplifying every breath. Then the page loaded, and I saw them, hundreds of videos, their thumbnails a blur of shadows and screams. I knew instantly what they were. My hand shook as I clicked the first one, unable to stop myself. The video opened in a dimly lit room. A woman strapped to a chair, her wrists bound with rope. Her eyes were wide with panic, her mouth gagged, muffled cries filling the speakers. I recognized her immediately, the heart-shaped tattoo on her neck. Our neighbor. 2 figures stepped into the frame, and the world tilted beneath me. My father, his face cold and methodical, held a knife that glinted in the low light. my mother. Her expression blank, clutched a scalpel. They didn't speak, didn't hesitate. The woman's screams grew louder as they began, their blades moving with a precision that made my blood run cold. Blood pooled on the floor, thick and dark, as her body slumped, lifeless. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were glued to the screen, my mind screaming in disbelief. My parents were murderers. The video ended, and another began automatically. The same room, the same chair, a different victim. I scrolled through the list, each thumbnail a new nightmare, each one set in that same cursed room. My hands shook so violently, I could barely control the mouse. I was about to close the browser, to run, to scream, when I saw it. A new video, uploaded that morning. My finger hovered over the play button, dread coiling in my chest like a snake. I clicked. The screen filled with that familiar room, the air thick with the stench of fear. A man sat in the chair, a sack over his head, his body trembling against the restraints. My father entered, his steps deliberate, and yanked the sack away. Alex's face stared back at me, his eyes wide with terror, his mouth taped shut. He struggled, his muffled cries clawing at my heart. My mother stepped into view, her scalpel gleaming, and the video cut to black. I sat there, frozen, the room spinning around me, my best friend, my parents, the murders. It was all connected, and I was trapped in the center of it. What had Alex found? Why was my name the key to this horror? The screen glowed in the darkness, a silent witness to my unraveling world. I haven't slept since, every night. I lie awake, wondering if they know I've seen it, wondering if Alex is still alive, wondering if I'm next. It started with a flicker on the screen, a ghostly blur that shouldn't have been there. In 2008, Brisbane's summer heat clung to our house like a second skin, the kind that made you restless, desperate for distraction. I was 19, sprawled in my room, wrestling with a new AV transmitter my dad had bought to pipe Foxtel cable from the lounge to my TV. The idea was simple. Plug in the box, sync the signal, and enjoy cable without shelling out for another box. But as I fiddled with the cables, the screen hissed with static, then sharpened into something that froze my blood. A live feed of a bedroom, dimly lit, sheets crumpled, and a stillness that felt wrong. Was that my bed? My heart thudded. a primal alarm screaming in my chest. I'd seen enough horror movies to know this wasn't right. The room was empty, but the feed was alive, broadcasting in real time. I sprinted upstairs to my sister, 16, who was lounging in her room, oblivious to the creeping dread I felt. "Come look at this," I urged, my voice tight. She followed, rolling her eyes. But when she saw the screen, her smirk vanished. "That's not your room," she said, her words heavy with unease. The bed wasn't mine. Too big, too tidy. With a headboard I didn't recognize. But whose was it? The AV receiver was picking up a signal it shouldn't. A secret feed from somewhere close. My mind raced to the worst. Someone's watching us. I thought of Saw 2. The scene where a TV reveals a hidden camera in an apartment, and my stomach churned. Was this happening to us? Were we the ones being watched? We sat frozen, staring at the screen, the empty room mocking our confusion. The signal was strong, too strong for it to be far. It had to be a neighbor's house, close enough for the AV receiver to catch it. My parents came home, and we showed them the feed. Dad squinted, his jaw tightening. "That's the neighbor's bedroom," he said, recognizing the layout. The house next door, a quiet couple we barely knew, was under renovation. Workers came and went, hammering and drilling for weeks. We guessed maybe one of them, a jealous spouse, perhaps, had set up a camera to catch the other cheating. It was a grim but plausible explanation. But why was it broadcasting to us? The thought gnawed at me. A splinter of doubt lodged deep. For days, we kept the receiver on, half curious, half terrified. The novelty wore thin, replaced by a creeping guilt. Watching felt wrong, like peering through someone's window. But we couldn't look away. The camera showed nothing most of the time, just an empty bed, a silent room. But one afternoon, while Mom was home alone with me, the screen flickered again. A man stepped into the frame, his work boots heavy on the floor. It was the plumber, a regular at the neighbors during the renovations. He was broad-shouldered, unremarkable, the kind of guy you'd pass without a second glance. But then he moved to the dresser, his hands deliberate, pulling open drawers. He's not supposed to be there. My breath caught as he lifted a pair of women's underwear, holding it to his face, inhaling deeply. My mom gasped, her hand gripping my arm. "What the hell is he doing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He knows. The thought hit me like a slap. The plumber turned, his eyes locking onto the camera, as if he could see us through the lens. His stare was cold, deliberate, stripping away any illusion of safety. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst. He knows we're watching. Mom's face was pale, her nails digging into my skin. The plumber didn't blink, didn't move, just stood there, his gaze boring into us. Then, slowly, he reached for the camera, his fingers brushing the lens before setting it back down. The screen went black for a moment, then flickered back to the empty room. We sat in silence, the air thick with dread. He's not just a plumber. Mom called Dad immediately, her voice shaking as she recounted what we'd seen. I kept staring at the screen, half expecting the plumber to reappear, his face pressed against the lens, smiling. Dad stormed home, his face a mask of fury. "We're telling the neighbors," he said, his tone final. Mom begged him to stay out of it, terrified of what might happen if we confronted the wrong person. But Dad was already out the door, marching to the neighbor's house. They were stunned, their faces draining of color as Dad explained. They let him into their bedroom. And there it was, a small device embedded in the wall, disguised as a water usage monitor, standard in Brisbane during the drought. But behind it, a tiny camera, its lens glinting like a predator's eye. Someone had planned this. The neighbors called the police, who arrived within the hour. They removed the device, bagging it as evidence, their faces grim. For a week, we heard nothing. The silence louder than any scream. We stopped using the AV receiver, but the image of that room burned into my mind every night. I checked the locks, peered out the windows, convinced I'd see a shadow moving in the dark. Then, Mom spoke to the neighbor's wife, and the truth unraveled. The police had traced the camera's signal to a laptop in a car, a station wagon with tinted windows, parked on our street at night. The plumber had been coming back, sitting in that car, watching the feed. He was out there, night after night, watching them sleep. The realization hit like a physical blow. I remembered that car, on late nights, stumbling home from a party or a walk with my girlfriend. I'd seen it, a bulky station wagon, always parked 30 meters down the street, its windows dark. I'd passed it countless times, glancing at my reflection, never imagining someone was inside. Staring back, he was there, watching, all along. My skin crawled, a wave of nausea rising. The police confirmed it. The plumber had been using the camera to spy on the neighbors, maybe for weeks, maybe longer. They didn't say what else they found on his laptop, but the neighbor's wife said he'd been arrested. We never saw him again. But the fear lingered, a stain on our quiet street. Every time I close my eyes, I see that room, that lens, that stare. Our house felt different after that, like it held secrets we'd never uncover. I stopped trusting the walls, the windows, the very air we breathed. What if there were other cameras, other eyes watching us? The thought haunts me still, a shadow that follows me through every room, every night. Lock your doors, check your walls. You never know who's watching. It was a cold October night when I first felt it, a shadow creeping into my life, one I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. My sophomore year at a state college in New Jersey was supposed to be the peak of freedom. No more cramped dorms, no more curfews. My 5 buddies and I had rented a rickety house off campus, a place with peeling paint and creaky floors. But it was ours. Next door, 6 girls we'd known since freshman year, including Alyssa, my friend, who was like a little sister, lived in a similar rundown rental. Life was loud, parties, late-night laughs, and the kind of chaos only college kids could love. But beneath the surface, something dark was waiting, and its name was TJ. The air in that lecture hall felt stale, heavy with the scent of cheap coffee and nervous sweat. Alyssa had dragged me to a campus event called Learn to Give the Perfect Massage. I wasn't thrilled. Forced socializing wasn't my thing, but her enthusiasm was infectious, like sunlight breaking through a storm. She was always chasing new experiences, from StarCraft Club to getting stoned on the roof. This time, I caved, figuring I'd meet some new faces. We slipped into the room 5 minutes late, the instructor's voice droning on about pressure points. My eyes scanned the crowd, mostly awkward freshmen and overeager guys hoping to flirt. Then I saw him. TJ sat alone at the back, knees pulled to his chest, staring at the floor like it held secrets. His plain white shirt and jeans blended into the background, but his stillness was unnerving. It was as if the room moved around him, while he remained frozen. A predator watching prey. He didn't glance up, didn't fidget, didn't smile. His face was a mask, and something about it sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't explain it then, but I felt it. A warning, deep in my gut, that this guy was different, dangerous. The lecture dragged on, and we were paired up to practice. I got a chatty girl with long black hair. Harmless enough. Alyssa wasn't so lucky. She was stuck with TJ. From across the room, I couldn't hear their conversation, but her stiff posture told me everything. When the session ended, I walked over to find her packing her bag with forced focus, avoiding eye contact. TJ stood there, staring at me, his gaze cold and unblinking. 10 seconds felt like an eternity, his eyes boring into mine, daring me to speak. I opened my mouth to introduce myself, but he turned and walked away, leaving a chill in the air. "What was that about?" I asked Alyssa. Her voice trembled slightly. "He didn't say a word, just told me his name was TJ. Can we go?" That night, we partied at our house with Alyssa and her roommates. Beer cans littered the floor, music thumped through the walls, and for a moment, TJ was forgotten. But the next morning, Alyssa's phone buzzed with a new kind of terror. 5 emails, all from different addresses. But the sender was unmistakable. TJ was no longer just a shadow in a lecture hall. He was invading her life. "Hey, Alyssa, it's TJ from class. Nice meeting you." Another, "Know any parties tonight? I'd love to take you." Then, "Do you use this email often? Please write back with your number." The last one was worse. "I added you on Facebook. My name's Joe Simpson." Alyssa hadn't given him her email. He'd likely scraped it from a school mailing list. But the speed and intensity unnerved her. She sent a polite but firm reply, lying about a protective boyfriend, my roommate, to shut him down. But TJ didn't stop. He never stopped. The name Joe Simpson was fake. Over the next week, he tried adding her on Facebook with names like Henry Ford, John Jones, even Jim Carrey, her favorite actor. How did he know that? The question gnawed at us. Each message grew more personal, more invasive, as if he was peeling back layers of her life without permission. Days turned into weeks, and TJ's obsession deepened. His messages were no longer just words. They were chains, wrapping tighter around Alyssa's life. He got her phone number somehow, and the calls began. At 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., her phone would light up, his number flashing like a warning. Sometimes he spoke, his voice low and deliberate, saying things like, "Your boyfriend's cheating. Leave him for me." Other times, he stayed silent, letting the dead air suffocate her. He even got her boyfriend's number, bombarding him with texts. "You're worthless. She doesn't love you." Alyssa's carefree spirit started to crack, her smile fading under the weight of constant fear. We went to the school for help, But this was before campus safety was taken seriously, without a direct threat. They dismissed it as a student dispute. They brought TJ in for a talk, but it changed nothing. 3 days later, Alyssa's phone pinged with a new message. 2 words that froze her blood. Her address. The reality hit us like a freight train. This wasn't just harassment. TJ knew where she lived. Alyssa packed a bag and moved into our house, too scared to stay next door. You can't escape someone who knows your every move. I'll never forget that night. Snow fell like ash, blanketing the empty streets, and I was drunk, stumbling home from a bar at 2 a.m. My thin shirt clung to my skin, soaked from the cold. As I rounded the corner to our house, I saw him, TJ, standing on our porch, his silhouette sharp against the dim streetlight. In one hand, a collapsible baton gleamed faintly. In the other, he held a key, our key. Time slowed, and my heart pounded like a war drum. His eyes locked onto mine, cold and unyielding, like a hunter sizing up prey. "Hi, my name's Henry Ford," he said, his voice flat, unblinking. "Do you know where 48 High Street is?" The snow kept falling, but he didn't move, didn't brush it off his face. It was unnatural, like he was part of the darkness itself. I shook my head, my voice steady despite the fear. "TJ, I know who you are. You need to leave." His face shifted, a twisted smile curling his lips. In one fluid motion, he swung the baton, cracking it across my ribs. Pain exploded through me, sharp and blinding, like my bones had shattered into dust. I staggered, stars flashing in my vision. But instinct took over. I swung a wild right hook, catching his jaw. He let out a scream, primal, unhuman, and bolted down the street, vanishing into the night. My roommate spilled out, half asleep, finding me clutching my side in the snow. The police came, but my drunken state worked against me. "How do you know who hit you?" they asked. Skeptical. No charges were filed, but TJ was expelled. For a moment, we thought it was over. We were wrong. Alyssa stayed with us, sleeping on our couch, her laughter slowly returning. But the fear lingered, a shadow we couldn't outrun. She stopped checking her email obsessively, even went to the bar some nights. I stopped carrying the knife I'd tucked in my boot. Life crept back toward normal. But it was a fragile illusion. TJ was gone from campus, but his presence hung over us like a storm cloud. The restraining order Alyssa filed felt like a paper shield against a monster we couldn't see. 2 Months later, I was up late, binge watching 6 Feet Under on my laptop. The clock read 3 a.m., and the house was silent, save for the hum of my screen. A notification pinged, a new message from Frank Ford. My stomach dropped. "Hey, you don't know me. I'm Alyssa's friend from bio. Need her new number for a study group." Lies. It was him. Always him. I replied, refusing to give her number. And he snapped back, "Stupid prick. I'll come over and make you tell me." I deactivated my account, my hands shaking. Alyssa's fear returned, her eyes hollow as she read the messages he sent her, questions about her new club, her biology professor, her life. He was still watching, still waiting. Years passed, and college faded into memory. Alyssa changed her number, used fake names on social media, tried to rebuild her life. TJ's calls dwindled, one a month, then one every few months, then silence. We dared to hope he'd gotten help, that the nightmare was over. But last Tuesday, at 3 a.m., my phone lit up with a message from Henry Ford. 3 words that dragged me back into the darkness. "Did you miss me?" The next line was worse. "Help me find her, or I'll find you." He's still out there. I don't know if he's watching my old apartment, my new home, or reading this now. Every creak in the house, every shadow in the street feels like him. You can't escape someone who never lets go. Alyssa's laughter is gone, replaced by a quiet fear we both carry. And me? I'm left wondering if I'll ever be free of TJ, the psychopath who turned my college years into a nightmare that never ends. When I was 6, I thought Trevor was my hero, the older brother I never had, his smile a shield against the world's cruelties. But by the time I was 12, that shield had warped into something sinister, a chain tightening around my life, pulling me into a nightmare I couldn't escape. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how a childhood friend became my deepest fear. His obsession carving scars that linger in the shadows of my memory. At 6, I saw Trevor through the lens of innocence. He was 12, tall and lanky, with messy brown hair and eyes that sparkled when he laughed. Our neighborhood was a patchwork of small houses, their lawns dotted with dandelions, and Trevor was my constant companion. We'd race bikes down the cracked sidewalk, the summer air thick with the scent of cut grass and freedom. He'd let me win, his grin wide as he handed me a dandelion crown, saying, "You're the queen of the street, Emily." I'd beam, calling him my brother, the one who'd protect me when the older kids teased. My sister, Claire, older and wiser at 14. Never liked him. He's weird, she'd mutter, her eyes narrowing as she watched him linger too long at our doorstep. But I didn't see it. To me, Trevor was safe, his presence a warm blanket against the chaos of my parents' crumbling marriage. Feel that warmth, that trust, because it's about to unravel. When my parents split, Mom took Claire and me to live with my grandparents. 2 years of distance that stretched like an eternity. Trevor's face faded, but his memory clung to me, a bittersweet anchor of childhood. When I was 10, we moved back. The neighborhood felt smaller, the houses shabbier, but Trevor was still there, waiting. I ran to him, my heart alight with the joy of reunion, expecting his familiar grin. Instead, his face was a mask of anger, his eyes cold as winter frost. "Why did you leave me, Emily?" he demanded, his voice sharp, cutting through the humid air. I stammered, explaining my parents' separation, but he shook his head, his jaw tight. "You're lying. You ran off with someone else." His words stung, their weight heavy with accusation. I was just a kid, confused by his intensity, but I wanted my friend back. Look closer, feel the unease creeping in, because something's not right. We resumed our games, but they felt different. Trevor's laughter was forced, his gaze lingering too long, his hands brushing mine with a purpose I couldn't name. I pushed it down, telling myself it was nothing, just the awkwardness of growing up. But the air between us had changed, thick with an unspoken tension that made my skin prickle. By 12, I was no longer the wide-eyed girl who saw Trevor as a brother. Puberty had made me self-conscious, my body changing in ways I barely understood. Trevor, now 17, noticed too. His questions grew invasive, his voice low and probing as we sat in his backyard, the sun setting behind the sycamore tree. "Have you started your period yet, Emily?" he asked, his eyes fixed on me, unblinking. I laughed nervously, my cheeks burning, and changed the subject. But he pressed, asking about my body, my clothes, details I didn't want to share. Feel the weight of his stare, the way it pins you in place. One day, he insisted we play house, but this time, he called it a wedding. He dressed in his father's old suit, too big for his frame, and slipped a cheap plastic ring onto my finger, his hands trembling as he whispered, "We're married now, Emily, forever." I giggled, thinking it was a game, but his eyes were deadly serious, his grip on my hand too tight. When I tried to take the ring off, he snapped, "Don't. It's rude to reject a gift." I kept it on around him, but at night, I hid it in my drawer, its weight a silent accusation. The months that followed were a slow descent into dread. Trevor's presence became suffocating. He'd show up at my window at midnight, his silhouette looming against the glass, his voice soft but insistent. "Emily, let me in. I just want to talk." I'd pretend to sleep, my heart racing, the room suffocating with the scent of my own fear. Claire caught him once, her voice sharp as she threatened to call the police. He stopped coming, or so I thought. But the shadows never lie. Do they? They see what you miss. Things in my room began to shift. My bed, always neatly made, would be rumpled when I came home. My trinkets, a music box, a photo frame, would be moved, their positions slightly off, as if someone had touched them with care. I blamed Claire, but she swore it wasn't her, her eyes wide with concern. Then came the flowers. A bouquet of wilting roses appeared on my dresser, a card tucked among the petals. "Happy anniversary, Emily. 1 year together. Love, Trevor." My stomach churned. Anniversary? I confronted my parents, furious they'd let him into my room. They exchanged glances, their faces pale. "We didn't," Mom whispered. "We never saw him." The room feels smaller now, doesn't it? The walls closing in, the air thick with violation. I started avoiding Trevor, claiming homework, locking my door at night. But his calls persisted, his voice haunting my answering machine with messages of love and guilt. "You owe me, Emily. We're married. Don't you care?" I silenced my phone, but the dread grew, a living thing coiling in my chest. Then, one night, everything shattered. I was asleep, dreaming of open fields, when a sound pulled me back, a low, guttural moan, not quite human, coming from my room. My eyes snapped open, but I couldn't move, my body frozen as the air grew heavy with the scent of sweat and desperation. You know that moment when fear becomes real, when the monster isn't under the bed, but standing over you. My father's shout broke the spell, his footsteps thundering toward my room. The door flew open, and there, bathed in the dim glow of his phone's light, was Trevor, naked, his eyes wild. He stood over me, his breathing ragged, his hands moving in a way that made my skin crawl. Dad lunged, but Trevor was faster, fleeing through the window, his shadow swallowed by the night. Mom's screams followed, her voice breaking as Dad recounted what he'd seen. Trevor's mother begged for mercy, claiming he was sick, that he believed we were married. Dad's rage was a storm, his threats echoing as he vowed to end Trevor if he ever returned. Trevor vanished after that night, his house dark, his mother's face a mask of shame whenever I saw her. The police found no trace of him, only rumors that he'd gone to live with an uncle in Illinois. But the scars he left lingered. Every creak of the floor, every shadow in the corner, feels like him, watching, waiting. I'm older now, my childhood home, a distant memory, but I still check my windows at night, my fingers tracing the lock's cold metal, the ring. That cheap piece of plastic sits in a box, a reminder of the boy who loved me too much, in a way that twisted love into terror. Do you lock your windows, or do you trust the shadows not to move? The night was too quiet, the kind of stillness that presses against your skin, heavy with secrets. I was 14, sprawled on the couch in our cramped duplex, the TV flickering with some late-night rerun I wasn't really watching. The upper half of the house felt hollow, without Mom or her boyfriend. Dale around. Mom was pulling a late shift at the diner. And Dale? Who knew where he was? Probably at some dive bar, wasting money we didn't have. The clock ticked past 11:30 p.m., and I was alone. The hum of the fridge, the only sound keeping me company. Then came the knock, sharp, deliberate. It cut through the silence like a blade. My heart jumped, a cold sweat prickling my neck. I froze, eyes darting to the door, its small, scratched peephole staring back at me like a blind eye. I tiptoed to the door, my bare feet cold against the linoleum floor, and peered through the peephole. The paint was chipped, but I could make out the figure outside. Jeff, my aunt's brother-in-law, the guy who lived in her basement down the block. His face was familiar, almost comforting, but something about his presence at this hour twisted my gut. I cracked the door open, just enough to speak. "Hey, Jeff, what's up?" My voice wavered, betraying the unease I tried to hide. He smiled, that slow, syrupy smile that never reached his eyes. "Is your mom or Dale home?" he asked, his tone too casual. too practiced. I shook my head. Mom's at work. And Dale's out. His smile widened, and he leaned closer, his breath faintly sour. Come downstairs for a sec. I need to talk to you about something. I hesitated, my hand gripping the doorframe. Jeff was family. Sort of. My aunt's husband's brother. The guy who'd always been around. Quiet, but harmless. Or so I'd thought. But standing there, in the dim glow of the porch light, he felt different, like a stranger wearing a familiar mask. Can't you just tell me here? I asked, my voice small. He chuckled, low and guttural, and gestured toward the street. It's easier outside. Come on. It'll be quick. Against every instinct screaming in my chest, I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. The night air was cold, biting at my bare arms. And then I saw it. His car, engine running, headlights slicing through the dark. In the passenger seat, barely visible, sat the guy I called Jerky Boy, Dale's creepy friend who always stared too long, his eyes crawling over me like insects. My blood turned to ice. Jeff's hand grazed my shoulder, his fingers lingering as he adjusted my spaghetti strap. It's okay, sweetheart, he murmured, his voice dripping with false warmth. We just want to ask you something. Come closer to the car. My heart pounded, a wild, frantic rhythm. As I took a step back, the headlights glared, blinding. And I realized standing in their beam would leave me exposed, unable to see them clearly. They wanted me blind, vulnerable. I'm good here, I said, forcing a smile, my voice trembling. Jeff's face hardened, just for a second, before the smile returned. Don't be scared. Just stand by the headlights, and we'll talk. The word headlights sent a jolt through me, electric and sharp. This wasn't right. My body screamed to run, but I couldn't let them see my fear. Not yet. I giggled. A fake. Airy sound I barely recognized. Oh, I can't. I'm barefoot, and there's dog poop everywhere out here. I stepped back toward the door, my hand brushing the knob. Jerky Boy's car door creaked open, and he stepped out, his silhouette looming in the dark. They were closing in. My pulse roared in my ears as I spun, yanked the door open, and sprinted inside, slamming it shut behind me. My fingers fumbled with the lock, the deadbolt sliding into place with a heavy thud. I backed away, my breath shallow, my eyes glued to the door. They wouldn't stop. A minute later, the knocking started again, softer this time, insistent. Hey, kiddo, Jeff's voice came through, smooth and coaxing. We just need to talk to Dale. Is he there? I didn't answer. My body pressed against the wall, every muscle tense. They knew Dale wasn't home. I crept to the back door, thinking I could slip out and run to my friend's house next door. But when I peered through the window, my heart stopped. Jerky Boy was there, waiting at the bottom of the stairs, his face half lit by the street lamp, eyes fixed on the door. They'd planned this, one at the front, one at the back, trapping me like an animal. My hands shook as I backed away, my mind racing. Jeff knocked again, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "We're so sorry we scared you. Honey, we just wanted to talk about your mom and Dale. Open the door, okay?" His words were a lie, a thin veil over something dark and hungry. I forced myself to speak, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my chest. "It's okay, Jeff. I just got spooked. I'll tell Dale you stopped by." I prayed my act was convincing, that they'd believe I wasn't suspicious, that I wouldn't run to the police. The knocking stopped, and after what felt like an eternity, I heard the car's engine rev and fade into the distance. I sank to the floor, my legs giving out, my body trembling with adrenaline. When I was sure they were gone, I grabbed my shoes, slipped out the back, and ran to my friend's house, my heart still pounding. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was scared and needed to stay until Mom got home. When I told Mom later, her face tightened, but she brushed it off, saying Jeff was just weird. Nothing happened. No police, no confrontation. 3 months later, I moved to my dad's house, 45 miles away, leaving that duplex and its shadows behind. Years later, the truth hit me like a freight train. I was in my 20s, unpacking old memories, when the weight of that night settled over me. Jeff and Jerky Boy hadn't just wanted to talk. They'd planned to lure me into that car, to take me somewhere I wouldn't come back from. The headlights, the running engine, the way they'd positioned themselves at both exits. It wasn't just about assault. They'd meant to silence me, to make sure I could never tell. I could have been a body in a ditch, a name in a missing persons report. The realization churned my stomach, a sickening mix of fear and relief. I'd escaped, but the what-ifs still haunt me, lurking in the quiet corners of my mind, waiting for a knock that never comes. Every step on the treadmill felt like a countdown, but I didn't know it yet. The gym was nearly empty that Thursday at noon. The hum of machines and faint pop music filling the air. I chose my usual spot, 2 treadmills from the end, facing the wall of mirrors that let me keep an eye on everything behind me. My headphones blared an episode of Criminal Minds, the familiar tension of the show grounding me as I jogged. But something felt off. A prickling sensation crawled up my neck, like unseen eyes boring into me. I glanced at the mirror, and there he was, a man on the treadmill right next to mine. His gaze locked on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He was unremarkable at first glance. Average build, plain gym clothes, maybe in his 30s. But his eyes, dark, unblinking, fixed on my reflection, sent a shiver through me. I tried to focus on my show, on Derek Morgan's voice, but every few minutes, I caught him staring again, his head tilted slightly, studying me like a predator, sizing up prey. Why choose the treadmill right next to me when the entire row is empty? My pulse quickened, not from the workout, but from the growing unease. I told myself I was overreacting. People stare sometimes. It's just a gym, right? 37 minutes into my 45-minute cardio. He made his move. His phone slipped from the treadmill's console, landing near my feet with a deliberate thud. I saw it in the mirror. He didn't drop it. He tossed it. He stepped off his machine, knelt to pick it up, and tapped my shoulder. My headphones stayed in, muffling his words. But I caught the shape of a smile, too wide, too forced. Hi, I'm... His name was lost in the chaos of a shootout on my screen. I gave a fake name. Sarah. My voice clipped, hoping he'd take the hint. He didn't. He kept talking, leaning closer, his breath hot against the air between us. I nodded vaguely, eyes back on my show, willing him to leave. He didn't. When my workout ended, I moved to the stretching area, still in view of the mirrors. He followed, abandoning his treadmill after just 8 minutes, barely a warm-up. He picked a machine nearby, his eyes never leaving me. I counted his reps, a habit from years of staying vigilant. 1, 2, 3. Pause. His gaze burned into me, unrelenting, like he was memorizing every detail of my face, my body. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of instinct screaming danger. I had to get out. In the middle of his next set, I grabbed my bag and slipped out, thinking I could reach my car before he noticed. The parking lot was a sea of asphalt under the midday sun. My car parked at the far end. I always backed into my spot, A tip from a police safety post I'd read online. A small act of caution that felt vital now. My keys jangled in my hand as I hurried across the lot. The air thick with the scent of exhaust and warm pavement. I unlocked my car, slid into the driver's seat, and reached for my seatbelt. Then the passenger door swung open. My breath caught. A scream trapped in my throat. He was there, one hand on the door frame, his face calm, but his eyes wild, like a storm about to break. "Hey, wait," he said, his voice low, almost pleading, but it carried a weight that made my blood run cold. "Don't touch my car," I shouted, my voice sharper than I intended. I slammed the gas, the car lurching forward with both doors still open. The wind roaring past. I drove a mile down the road, my heart hammering, the passenger door flapping like a warning flag. Only when I reached a busy intersection did I pull over, slam the door shut, and lock it, my hands trembling so badly I could barely grip the wheel. He'd followed me. He'd opened my door. What did he want? The questions swirled, each one darker than the last. The next day, I marched into the gym, my stomach knotted with anger and fear. I demanded to speak to the manager, recounting every detail, the staring, the dropped phone, the chase to my car. But I didn't know his name, only his face, those unblinking eyes etched into my memory. The manager's response was a shrug, a promise to look into it without checking the cameras. "We'll talk to him if we figure out who it is," he said, his tone dismissive, like my fear was an inconvenience. They weren't going to do anything. That night, I canceled my membership, the decision heavy, but final. I couldn't go back, not to a place where safety felt like an illusion. Even now, weeks later, I check my rearview mirror when I drive, half expecting to see his face in the car behind me. The gym was supposed to be my sanctuary, a place to feel strong, but he turned it into a nightmare. What if I hadn't moved fast enough? What if he tries again? Those questions linger, a shadow that follows me, a reminder that danger can hide in the most ordinary places. The restaurant was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of a wedding reception. But his eyes found me through the crowd. It was a Saturday evening in Canada, the air crisp with early fall, and I was at a cozy bistro with my family, celebrating nothing in particular, just the warmth of being together. Across the room, a young man, maybe mid-20s, stood with a wedding party, his suit sharp, but his demeanor shy. He caught my gaze, offered a polite smile, and later approached, his voice soft as he handed me his number. "I'd love to grab coffee sometime," he said, his eyes earnest. I'm 35, cautious by nature, but his charm felt genuine. I texted him the next day, and we agreed to meet at a bustling cafe downtown. Midday, public, safe. I told a friend where I'd be, sent her his name, and laughed at my own paranoia. What could go wrong over coffee? The cafe smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries, sunlight streaming through tall windows. He was already there, seated at a corner table, his posture stiff, like he was waiting for an interview. At first, the conversation flowed easily. Work, hobbies, a shared love for basketball. He was younger than I'd thought, 22, with a boyish grin that disarmed me. But then, his tone shifted, like a switch had been flipped. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "So, have you ever walked in on something wild?" he asked, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. He told a story about finding 2 women in his bed after a party, his words dripping with suggestion. I forced a laugh, brushing it off. "That's a weird thing to tell someone you just met," I said, steering the talk back to neutral ground. But his questions kept coming. Rapid fire, invasive. Do you drink? Smoke? Party? See other guys? Each one felt like a probe, testing boundaries. I hadn't invited him to cross. I shifted in my seat, the cafe's warmth now stifling. His stare was unrelenting, his body leaning closer, crowding the small table. I leaned back, my chair scraping the floor, a subtle signal he ignored. "There's a basketball game on soon," he said, checking his phone. "Come back to my place to watch it." My stomach twisted. "No, thanks," I replied, my voice firm. "We just met. I'm not comfortable with that." His face changed, a flicker of something dark, disappointment, maybe anger. "I thought you'd want to," he pressed, his tone insistent. "Why not? Just come over. It's no big deal." I repeated my refusal, each word measured, my heart racing. He suggested a park, then a walk behind the cafe, his voice growing desperate. "I'll do anything you want. Just don't leave." The air felt heavy, like a storm about to break. I stood, grabbed my bag, and said, "I'm not going anywhere with you. We'll talk later." His eyes followed me as I walked to my car. and as he pulled away, he shouted, "I'll change your mind." I drove home, my hands trembling on the wheel, the city blurring past. My phone buzzed before I even reached my apartment. Texts, one after another, lighting up the screen. "You're so beautiful. Come over. I can see a future with us." I ignored them, but they kept coming, relentless, like waves crashing against a crumbling shore. By the time I locked my door, my phone was vibrating non-stop. Calls at 7:55, 8 o'clock, 8:02, 8:07. Then a video, him on his couch, basketball game flickering in the background, his voice pleading, "I'm alone. You should be here." My heart pounded, each notification a hammer against my nerves. He's not stopping. I texted back, polite but firm. "I don't feel the same way. Please stop." But the calls continued, a barrage that drowned out my thoughts. By midnight, my phone logged over 200 messages, each one more frantic, more obsessive. "You owe me an explanation. Tell me what I did wrong." I couldn't sleep. The phone's glow a constant reminder of his presence. The next morning, I went to the police station, my hands shaking as I showed them the texts, the call logs, the video. The officers were kind, their faces serious as they scrolled through the evidence. "This is obsessive behavior," one said. "You did the right thing coming here." They took his name, or the nickname he'd given me, and promised to look into it. But he hadn't threatened me, not explicitly, so they could only file a report. I left feeling exposed, like I'd handed over a piece of my safety and gotten nothing in return. What if they call him? What if it makes him angry? The thought looped in my mind, a relentless cycle of fear. Back home, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow in my apartment seemed to move. Every creak, a warning. I bought alarms, magnetic ones for the doors, glass break sensors for the windows, and installed them with shaking hands. Each click of the drill felt like a small act of defiance, a way to reclaim my space. But when I climbed into bed, I felt the hammer I'd hidden between the headboard and mattress tap against the wall, a grim reminder of the danger still lurking. He only has my number, I told myself. But it didn't help. Days later, a new message arrived from an unknown number, long and pleading. I was just excited to meet someone so beautiful, so perfect. Give me one more chance. He'd found me on Facebook, his profile wide open, no privacy settings, a digital window into his obsession. I sent the link to the police, my stomach churning. Will they confront him? Will it make him worse? Every buzz of my phone feels like a threat now. I'm safe, for now, behind locked doors and blaring alarms. But his shadow lingers. I don't know if he's given up or if he's waiting. Watching from some corner of the city I'll never see. Check your phone. Trust your instincts. Some connections are traps. The evening was quiet, too quiet, until my dog's frantic barking shattered the stillness. I was alone in my small suburban house, the kind with faded shutters and a creaky porch, nestled in a neighborhood where nothing ever happened, or so I thought. The clock on the wall read just past 6 p.m., and the fading sunlight cast long shadows across the living room. I was curled up on the couch, half lost in a book, when the sharp, insistent yips of my dog, Max, pulled me to my feet. Something was wrong. My heart quickened as I crossed the room, the hardwood cold beneath my bare feet, and peered through the window. That's when I saw him, a man standing at my front door, his silhouette framed against the dim glow of the porch light. I froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Max's barks grew louder, more desperate, his small body trembling as he pressed against my legs. "Trust your instincts," a voice in my head whispered. But curiosity got the better of me. I leaned toward the door's small, painted-over glass panel, scratching at the makeshift peephole I'd made months ago. The man outside wore a navy polo shirt with a city logo embroidered on the chest, the kind you'd expect from a utility worker. But something was off. His face was half hidden by a baseball cap, and his eyes darted nervously, scanning the street. Behind him, parked in my driveway, was a plain white van, no logo, no markings, just a blank, menacing slab of metal that screamed wrongness. He knocked again, harder this time, the sound echoing through the house like a warning. My stomach twisted, a cold knot of dread forming. "Who's there?" I called, my voice steadier than I felt. "City maintenance," he replied, his tone clipped, professional, but with an edge I couldn't place. "I'm here to check your air conditioner." My mind raced. The city doesn't fix air conditioners. They never send workers alone, and their vehicles always have logos, bright, official decals that scream legitimacy. This van had none of that. "This isn't right." Max growled low, his fur bristling, and I tightened my grip on the doorknob, keeping it locked. "I think you've got the wrong house," I said, forcing calm into my voice. He stepped closer, his shadow looming larger through the glass. "No, ma'am. This is the right address. It'll just take a minute. Let me in, and I'll handle it." His words were smooth, rehearsed, but his eyes, visible now as he tilted his head, were cold, calculating, like a predator sizing up its prey. "You're not safe." My instincts screamed. I stepped back, closing the distance between me and Max, who was now snarling softly. "No, I'm good. You need to leave." My voice shook slightly, betraying the fear clawing at my chest. He didn't move at first, just stood there, his hand resting on the doorknob, as if testing it. Time seemed to stretch, each second heavy with the weight of what might happen if that door opened. Then, he pulled out his phone, pretending to check something. "Oh, my mistake," he said, his voice suddenly light, almost cheerful. "Wrong house number. Sorry about that." He turned and walked back to his van, his steps slow, deliberate, like he was giving me one last chance to change my mind. I watched through the peephole as he climbed into the driver's seat, the van's engine rumbling to life. The headlights flashed across my front yard, and then he was gone, swallowed by the darkening street. I locked the deadbolt, my hands trembling, and slid to the floor, Max nudging my arm with his wet nose. What just happened? My mind replayed every detail. The logo that didn't belong. The van that looked like it belonged in a crime documentary. The way his eyes lingered too long. I grabbed my laptop and started searching, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Articles flooded the screen. Stories of thieves posing as utility workers, preying on homes with predictable schedules. They didn't need expensive loot, just an empty house and an open door. He wasn't here to fix anything. He was here to take something. Maybe my belongings, maybe me. That night, I barely slept, my mind haunted by the image of that van, its blank sides gleaming under the streetlights. What if I'd let him in? The question gnawed at me, a cold reminder of how close I'd come to danger. Max stayed by my side, his ears twitching at every sound outside. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times. Each turn of the bolt a small act of defiance against the fear. You can't trust everyone who knocks on your door. And somewhere out there, that man, or someone like him, was still waiting for the next house, the next mistake.